Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to do an unboxing of The Long Road, World War III with a paranormal twist, published by Flying Pig Games and developed by Mark H. Walker. Now the core of this game is World War III platoon level combat, but while you can play this game as a traditional US versus Soviet World War III hypothetical game, the heart of the game adds a paranormal twist, where not only do you have US and Soviet forces, you've also got werewolves, witches, vampires, and zombies to contend with. There's a lot to look at and a lot to think about. Let's open up the box and take a look at what's inside. To set the stage for this, it's 1985, but it's not the 1985 you know and love. It's 1985 with a paranormal twist. This game is set in the Dark War universe, which is another one of Mark H. Walker's creations. If you like to read, there are two novels from this universe and setting currently out there, Dark War Revelation and Dark War Retribution. I'll put links to them down below in the description. I picked up the first one today on Kindle for Amazon. It was like $2, so pretty good deal, about 250 pages, looks like an easy read, but I think that would be a nice thing to read as you're playing the game. Having said that, you don't have to play the game with the paranormal side to it. You can play it as a straight up World War III 1985 game, and in which case you have 10 scenarios that you can access for just that element. So it gives you your choice of whether you want to add in the paranormal or you want to leave it out. And the paranormal looks pretty cool, so I think I kind of like this type of design vision. It's different, it's kind of imaginative, and it looks like it's a lot of fun, and certainly a lot of attention and thought put into it. So with that being said, let's jump in now and open up the box. Now this is just under a 3-inch box, and as we shall see just by looking at it, it's stuffed with stuff. We've got 3 mounted maps, 7 counter sheets, 3 booklets in here, player's aids, cards, and some kind of bunch of dice and stuff like that. So there's quite a bit to go through. We have some things to look at. Let's take a look at the rulebook to get an idea of what's going on and take a look at the complexity of the game. Now, counting the back cover and front cover, the rulebook's about 40 pages. Index on the back, I love it. It's the best place for an index. It really is. It's so handy there. And as we can see, the rules are fairly hefty here. I mean, there's a good bit of text. There's a lot of graphics to help support, especially where they're showing the counters and giving visual information. And the text is spread out. It's not that clumped together. So it's pretty easy to read. But there is a good bit going on. And I think part of that element is because of the nature of the design vision of this game. It's set in 1985, so units can do a lot of things. You know, we have here wire-guided missiles, multispectral smoke dispensers. We've got opportunity fire, gun and run, overwatch, flanking fire. There's helicopters. There's multiple attacking combatants, transport, tank riders. So a lot of the features of tactical level combat. And by the way, again, this is set, individual units are platoon level, so 40 to 60 soldiers, and then vehicle counters are 2 to 5 level, so you're at this level of kind of tactical combat with this one. Zone of control, lines of sight to calculate, retreat, flanking, fire support for artillery. We have fire support for, blast markers, minefields, minefield removal, improved positions. So this is a fairly hefty system. And then as we get to the back here, we add in all of the special rules. A lot of the units have special capacities to just the regular World War III American and Soviet units, and there's East German units in here too, let's not forget them. But then we have kind of civilians that can be refugees and turn into armed mobs. We get zombies, the witches, the werewolves, and the vampires tossed in, and each one of those clans, each one of those elements has their own kind of unique characteristics and functions and abilities as well. If you add that all up, I think this is a fairly complex game, not from a conceptual standpoint, but just from the amount of kind of rules and bits of rules that you're going to be manipulating as you play. Now, I think there is an excellent design decision and a way to mitigate that complexity in that, and we'll take a look at that as we look at the campaign book. But I'm going to say that I would actually probably put this game pretty high on complexity. I'm going to guess like a 6 to execute it well, but I think I would bring it down to a 5 overall because of the way the campaign book is executed. So let's take a look a little bit at that now. Campaign book is roughly the same length, I think a little bit longer, I think closer to 50 pages, so a little bit bigger than the rule book. And there are 2 of these actually. So this tactics book is the campaign, the scenarios for the non-paranormal elements. This campaign book is the full Dark War universe scenarios, and there are 19 of them in here. And one thing that's really cool, that's one thing to say about it, and they do not, while they are set and they weave in and out of the novels, they don't directly parallel the novels. So they don't, it's not the same thing in the novels. So some of the characters will be there, brings them to life a little bit, but you're not spoiling anything, I think, by playing the game before you read the book. That might be not totally correct. You're going to learn some stuff, but it's not a direct retelling of the novels, for sure. The other thing to mention about the campaign that I think is really important is that I think it does a very good job. I mean, it's tricky to say until we started to get into play it a little bit, but I think it does a very good job of ramping up the complexity. For example, scenario 1 here is just Soviets versus Americans. There's no paranormal elements on here, and the amount of counters and the types of counters are relatively low. And this is a card assisted game, as we shall see, and even the number of cards you get is relatively limited at the beginning here. Now, one of the other things here, these scenarios are all linked in a story. It's not a forking campaign, so the outcome from one scenario doesn't, you're still going to go to scenario 2, but basically you're going to kind of read a setting, play the game, and then there's got some text that says don't read it until you get there. That's going to kind of continue the story on for you. So you play a game, read some of the story elements to it, then you're going to play up the second scenario and lather, rinse, repeat until you get all the way through the 19 scenarios in the book. Now again, scenario 2 has US versus Soviets again. Then scenario 3, we get an ambush. These are clan forces, paranormal forces against the Soviets. So this adds in that element. So the game does, I think, a very good job of kind of ramping up the complexity by weaving in the paranormal elements as you go along. So I think that's really going to make the learning curve a lot more enjoyable and a lot more manageable. So for that sake, I think the overall complexity, I would give it a 5 out of 10. I mean, there is a good bit of rule bits to learn, but I think they're going to be fun and enjoyable. And you kind of have to expect that with the more modern warfare tactical system game, and you're adding in some paranormal elements there too. So yeah, this is our campaign book. Again, 19 scenarios in all. Looks really cool, and the fictional bits that link the scenarios together, I really enjoyed kind of looking through those. So I think that's going to be fun to play. This is very similar in kind of design vision to this, the tactics book here. These are your non-paranormal elements here. And we get, so basically there are 6 scenarios, and it doesn't look like these are written with a story element linking them together. These look like these are just kind of setting the stage for the scenario, and then you play it. So these would be straight up US versus Soviet for the first 6 of these 10 scenarios in this book. But then scenario 7, kind of rather humorously, they had 35 blank counters left over, so they decided to add an East German faction. So you get 2 scenarios that also have East German forces in them as well, blending Soviet, US, and East Germans to make it a little bit more of an interesting tactical environment. And then for solitaire players, there's 2 solitaire scenarios. There's a US versus zombies, and then you get US versus Soviet, and for this one you control the Soviet and the AI controls the American, and I think for this one here, you play the Americans and the AI plays the zombies. Now, there is a kind of a caveat there. It says this isn't a full-blown AI bot. It's kind of more like guidelines than actual hard rules, but it should create kind of a very interesting, there's guidance for how to maneuver and move the AI forces that would make it kind of a little bit of an enhanced solo system experience there. But again, there's 2 of those, and you get 19 of the regular ones plus 8, so 27 scenarios that are designed for 2-player. In terms of giving this game a solitaire rating, I would say probably a 7. I mean, the solitaire scenarios are nice. There's not really anything here, I think, that would strike me as it's going to break the solitaire experience. You'd be playing both sides, kind of moving forward to it. And the card assistant element of it, you're going to be able to see each other's cards. But the cards, I think, are not a significant element to gameplay. They are an addition to gameplay. So I think it's going to work fine as a solitaire system if you're interested in that. Now we have here 6 10-sided dice and then 6 cubes. These cubes are hit point markers for the champions because we have 4 decks of cards. You may get 3. I think these are Kickstarter bonuses that may or may not be within a set that you get, depending on when and how you purchase it going down the road here. Let's take a look at some of these cards though. So This is the regular deck, good for conventional forces. We get the backside here, which is cool. All vinyl, by the way. These are really nice cards. These are really high quality cards. And there's what, about 36 of them here. And again, what happens as you use these, you may get two, I think you can play 2 conventional ones per turn. So again, it's a card assistant game. Timing how you play these is going to be a fun little decision matrix that you're going to be involved with. You know, here's one thing for like an artillery barrage or double time to increase movement. We've got opportunity fire. So undisrupted unit may conduct opportunity fire, marker status changed. Second chance, remove the fired marker from one unit so it gets to fire again. So again, using these tactically could really enhance, I could see. So a lot of these are the same here. Op fire, artillery barrage for the motherland, raise the morale of all Warsaw Pact units by 1 for the current turn. So yeah, we get, oh, I get it. This is for the Soviet forces here, and these are for the US forces. So that's how these were broken down. So that's why both sides can use them. Sorry, I just figured that out as looking at these now. So lots of cards to enhance the game plan. I've shown some close-ups on those so we can see it. I think those are going to be a fun addition. Now let's take a look at the action cards for the paranormal elements, and there are 4 components to this. We have the action cards for the Lycan clan. So this is the werewolf deck here. We have the zombie action cards here. These are special cards for the champion Udverske, who we'll talk a little bit about. She's the mother of the Lycan clan or something. Like, she's a very powerful unit. And then the Vampire Coven cards are here. And if we look at, for example, this Udverske, so in the game I should mention too, actually let's talk a little bit about that, go sideways a little bit. These are the cards for the champion units in the game. And these are the ones that you use those little hit block markers for, because down the bottom here we can see that they all have hit points down here, and these are their special abilities. So these represent extraordinarily powerful units, and there are 6 of them in the game. We have Radu, Ledita, who looks kind of werewolfy, Tentani, and I think these are all characters from the book series as well too. So another one here, werewolf element. Udverske is the one here who has her own action deck. She has 1 action on them, and she can play them, I think, either in the fire or movement phase. So we have things like lightning, bolts of lightning, chain it, fireball, fireball. So not only do we have kind of this paranormal element, if you got witches and werewolves and vampires mixing in, you've got champion elements too, which are extraordinarily powerful units to really influence the battle that goes on. So there's a lot, again, as we can see, there's a lot here. This is a very creative, wide-ranging game with a lot of elements. I'm very curious to see how they all come together on the battlefield, but it looks like a ton of fun. So yeah, we have a deck here of all her cards and her actions right here. Then the other ones that we have, Katrina Ubirek, I think she's a vampire, and then a Gunari Hunter, which I think is also a werewolf. We go back to Radu, who is, I believe, a vampire as well. So we have these, again, these champion cards. They can really kind of be a tremendous force on a battlefield, which sounds, I mean, yeah, cool. Americans, Soviets, all kinds of paranormal elements. Here are the zombie cards. Theirs are just 1 action or so, faster than we think, double all zombie movement factors for this turn. So again, you know, played strategically, if these come up at the wrong time, you know, you could see them being a huge help or a huge hindrance. But again, this is a card-assisted game. You're playing these to enhance what's happening on the game board right now. Here are our Vampire Coven cards, OP Fire, Mind Control. Oh, target combatant within 3 hexes. An Emic fail. Okay, Mind Control. Oh, that's cool. Transmogrify. These are some really cool ones. Bloodsucker. After winning close assault, each participating V gains 1 luck marker. So lots of different unique abilities and kind of creativity applied to these kind of special paranormal units that are going to be in the game. Here we have our Lycans, the werewolves, and the clans forced to change. Fueled by stress and violence, the young clan members turn despite the lack of a moon. So they have 2 states, right? They have kind of an unturned and then a werewolf state. So apparently this one you could play during a lack of a moon turn to be able to force the change and turn them into werewolves, which I assume would be stronger units. So again, lots of vision and scope and kind of added elements to this added in here to kind of make the paranormal elements come to life. And lastly, we have another set of, it looks like it extends that tactical deck for the US and Soviet forces up to 45 actions, and I think these are special. These came from the Kickstarter, and they came with this version, but I'm not sure whether you would get them with the version that you get or not, but it looks like kind of a minor addition that enhances gameplay. I always like Kickstarter elements that enhance gameplay as well. All right, let's dig in and take a look. A lot of counter sheets here to look at as well. We've got 7 counter sheets. And one thing I will mention too that I think really helps with a game like this is these are big counters. And for a couple of reasons I think it helps. One, there's quite a bit of information on some of these counters, and there's going to be a lot going on. So it's going to be nice to have this on a big visual map, which we'll take a look. The map's hexes are large too. So these are all 1-inch hexes, 1-inch counters printed on both sides. We're looking, of course, in this first one at a good number of the markers. And combat in this basically works where you're comparing, you're getting kind of an armor, you're getting a to hit factor that's going to be subtracting armor, that's going to determine how many hits there are, and then the hits have to pass a certain check on them, I think a morale check sort of thing. The ones that pass, the first one that passes disrupts the units. The second one that passes, that gets through that morale check, reduces it by a step, and the third one wipes it out. And I might have a couple of pieces of that wrong, but that's the rough way that combat plays out. And here we are looking at Russian infantry units. They are the darker brown. Again, we've got some aircraft here, so lots of things, electronic countermeasures, ECM, out of ammunition. So there's quite a bit, helicopters, Hind helicopters here. Lots of things going on. The counters are great. I mean, they're really clear. I like the visual design on them. And they look really cool on the map too. Looking at more here, so again, we can see some kind of counters with Rex, Overwatch, anti-tank ditches, -1 hit, GFP dangers. I'm not sure quite what GFP is. And over here we start to get some of the US units, and then in here we get more Russian units. Some of the, here we got a mine roller. So again, a lot of these units too with special characteristics. And if we look at, let's take a look at one here. Yeah, this is a good one. So this is largely the Russian armored forces. And I'll show a close-up on one of these. But the numbers on the counters, there's quite a bit going on with color coordination that are going to signify some special capacities of a unit. But essentially, you've got these 5 numbers here. The top left is the armor piercing fire factor, the top right is your armor factor, bottom left is your high explosive factor, the middle is movement, and then the bottom right is your close assault factor there. So kind of dictating all the types of combat that could be engaged in terms of the game. And in those, then we have some here that have green boxes, orange boxes, and these all signify different things. Gray on the right, yellow outline. So it's going to take, I think, again, a while for you to kind of pick up how all of these systems work. And that's kind of the nature, I think, of a combat system, a modern combat system. So there's a good bit in there to learn as you go along. Now we get some of the paranormal characters here too. So we could, not that these are paranormal, but we get refugees. And if we look at the refugees, their flip side here is armed mobs, which is really cool. So we get kind of, I think if you agitate them, or they could trigger and they could go from refugees to grabbing weapons, and now they're armed mobs. There are also heroes and commanders, and heroes have these gun signals. So these are kind of larger than life characters that also represent not only the individual human hero, but kind of his posse, or the people that are with him or her as well. And then these commanders are armored heroes, if you would, in addition to that. So these are kind of represent somewhat the individual units, but they have kind of special abilities down on the left-hand side too. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. Here are Lycan clan forces. These are turned Lycan. These are the regular forces here. The unturned form, if you would, and then lots of zombies over here. And we have pukers. They have kind of, those are particularly nasty zombies that you don't want to run into. And here are, this is Tentani, who I believe this is one of the champions for the werewolf clan. So he's got a lot of special abilities down the left here that you have to contend with. So lots of fun things to deal with, and well, not to deal with, lots of fun things to entertain and play as you go along. We get some markers down here. These, I believe these green ones here are the East, these darker green are the East German forces. We've got some Russians over here and some US mixed in as well. So yeah, lots of cool things to look at. NATO symbols, of course, for the infantry, and then the vehicles are here. Here we get mostly US forces. So there are tunnels as well here too. So lots of stuff going on. Lots of things to enjoy and learn as we go through this. Cobras, Thunderbolt aircraft, And we get M113s and Abrams tanks up here. So lots of the classic Bradleys, M2 Bradleys are here. And again, all sides have a flipped and a depleted side to them on the back side of them here. And then lastly, some more Paranormal with some counters mixed in. So corpses, we get the zombie pukers. These, I think, US maybe? We get some luck factors in here. And these are the Coven, I believe, Vampire Coven. Here's Katarina, her special marker, her special counter, one of the champions, Radu. Here's Erdversky, that extremely powerful champion that we looked at that has the own individual action deck, Ledita and Ledita. I think one of these forms is when she's turned into a werewolf, and the other isn't, perhaps. Maybe that's why she has two counters there, although I might not be 100% sure on this. There are also some letters going on, things like the V is Vampire, Advanced Targeting gives you some different bonuses with an A and things like that. So lots of things involved in this. It's definitely a well thought out and very established kind of system that they've put together here. Now, let's take a look at the player aids. We have just two, relatively straightforward, a combat results player. The combat actually is very straightforward. It's once you kind of add in those capacities and capabilities of units, it's a very straightforward process. So that looks like it's going to be fairly quick to execute and play. And then the backside here we have terrain effects, which lists all the different effects of the different terrain. This text is fairly tiny down here, but I can see it in light pretty well here. But this one you might want to kind of blow up a little bit to make it a little bit larger. And then we have here a turn record track and sequence of play, the relatively kind of the basic sequence of play, and there's an initiative element as well. So some relatively simple player aids here. Now let's take a look at the maps. We've got 3 mounted maps, and these are relatively thin. I really like the quality on these mounted maps here. And one thing that I like is I kind of can hold it up here a little bit to the camera is they've all been folded over. So the map printing itself runs over the side and the edge of the map. I really like when that's done, and these feel just extraordinarily nice, high quality maps here, and just feel like they're going to be really kind of cool. I like the artwork on them. It's relatively straightforward, but for whatever reason, it kind of strikes me as Germany, East Germany, kind of World War III, that little kind of a gray, somber feel to them as well, especially kind of with a paranormal universe here of vampires and werewolves moving through these. It feels kind of dark with like a little bit of a horror edge to it. And that's, by the way, the dark war novels are military horror is what Mark Walker categorizes them at. So you kind of get that this little dark, somber element kind of, I think, emphasizes that design in this world that you're playing in. But yeah, very cool. These are 11 by 17 by 22, and I'll show some close-ups of these as we go through. We got roads and woods and some elevated terrain here. I'll show a couple more of these as we go, and they do fit together, not on each side, but you fit them together for some of the scenarios. Some scenarios use one map, some scenarios use two, and I think there's a couple that use three, and even sometimes it's three that are not joined together. And I'll show, zooming out on these as well, but relatively straightforward. Big city here, Großmetzendorf. Uberhaus, so lots of stuff. We got water in play as well, and then of course the roads and things. So yeah, these look really cool. I like these. Very, very well done. Very elegantly done. And I think that's kind of one of the things. I feel like this game. I mean, again, you don't know until you play it. I feel like the game though has had a ton of creative thought put into it, a ton of really interesting design decisions to really bring this alternate world and alternate world and hypothetical and paranormal world into play. So I'm very much looking forward to playing this as we look at our last map here. These, by the way, again, going into that element of this is a game that it's on a, the hexes, the counters are big, 1 inch. Each one of these hexes is 1 3/8 inches across roughly. So this again is going to give you a lot of space. And stacking, I believe, is 2 units per hex, and it's enforced all the time. So, I think with that involved, you're going to have a nice light footprint. There are some other units, like I think heroes and champions and stuff like that can be in a hex. They don't count for stacking, but there might be a 2-person limit to that as well. But I think the game is going to be a light stacking thing, so you're not going to have these big piles around that's going to make it hard to manage, with a lot of the complexity of the combat. And with that, in stacking being enforced at all times, it creates some tactical decisions there as well. So yeah, there we go. The Long Road. I'm very much looking forward. This is another one that I will be bringing some action to the channel, but it will be probably in about 2 to 3 months as I'm playing through some other games first. So I look forward to getting bringing this one to the table and enjoying it. Also, I will point you to a link on an unboxing for the expansion that I'll be putting up shortly too. There is an expansion to this that adds another map, more counters, and more scenarios as well. So a lot to explore here if this type of game, hypothetical World War III combat with a paranormal twist. I have not seen many games, if any. This is the first time I've seen a game like this that kind of entertains that element, combining World War III with this paranormal twist. So, we have a lot of traditional war games, and it's really fun to see a game that entertains this imaginative track here. So I'm very excited to give this one a try. I'm a big fan of science fiction, military horror, science fiction, fantasy, and I would kind of, that overlaps, I think, with the military horror element that's in here too. So I'm a big fan of it and looking forward to playing this. Let me know if you have questions that I can answer. Again, I'll put links to the expansion one as soon as it's ready, as well as other videos that you might want to take a look at on the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Have a great day.